estimate that corporate social investment spend in 2017 was 9.1 billion rand. And you'll see that the increase, the nominal number back in 1998 in the first handbook was 1.5 billion. So there has been real growth over that period, and there's over 137 million that's been invested by companies in social development over those 20 years.
It's not just business only that have an opportunity to leverage their power and privilege to create a better society. Each one of us has different levels of privilege and power. It could be like me because of the people that gave me scholarships and bursaries. My parents could only take me up to grade 7. Thereafter, it was the generosity of strangers that made it possible for me to study. Churches provided bursaries, countries overseas provided bursaries, and companies provided bursaries.
For us, it all starts with ethical leadership, because when you have good leadership, it will enact good policies that are in the best interest of the majority of our people, to improve the quality of lives of those that are less fortunate than ourselves. When we've got ethical leadership that enacts good policies, there will be a positive uplift called positive sentiment. Because what drives share price is sentiment, rumor and speculation. That's why we're basking in the glory of this good positive sentiment at the moment. And I think we need to celebrate the fact that we've been given a last chance, not a second chance. Because a real and true professional really expects and seldom gets a second chance.
From a social justice point of view, how do we undo this inequalities, which is across politics, across race, across gender, which is to do with patriarchy also in the social space, and how do we change it in one generation? And for me, that is systematically, if we want to deal with these structural inequalities, we have to do it in a sustainable way that in one generation it is gone.
Nedbank for a while has seen that if there is any change that's going to happen in society, we needed to locate some of that change within a thing that will be structural, like you were saying, some of the 4 things that you mentioned. One of them was it must be systematic. And I suppose we also were listening to Tato Madiba when he was talking about the importance of education. So we tend to spend an immense amount of our CSI budget on education.
Consumer activists, communities, employees, governments and investors alike expect companies to play a more prominent role to create societal impact. For investors, the appeal is growing. Evidence that corporate performance in delivering social impact positively affects returns over the long term.
When we are dealing with kind of complex, non-technical, elusive problems, inequality, structural unemployment, community safety, racism, land reform, tough challenges to name but a few. In an uncertain and polarized environment that we find ourselves in, not just in this country but around the world, partnering and collaboration is not an optional extra, but it's integral to the process of change.
This will really help our organization to really think about strategizing on how we want to achieve the goals that we have set, but also how to continuously adjust our programs according to the ever-changing needs of our community.
the four big things that stand out for us are really that companies are trying to be more strategic, more systematic, more differentiated in terms of what they're hoping to do. There is a growing focus on flagship programs. I remember the first 2-3 years we would walk into boardrooms and we would say, but what's your flagship? And they just look at us saying, what? But that's, I think finally, a lot of boards are saying that can we really create flagships that reflect our stakeholder needs, that leverage our core competencies, that are aligned with our brand, our values, and can we continue to invest in these flagships over a period of time?
We believe very strongly that ICTs are an enabler. ICTs are a tool for development. And therefore, it is important that as social partners, government, civil society in its entirety, and business, we should identify challenges and come to some kind of sufficient consensus, and then say, what do we do with ICTs in order to contribute to solving societal challenges? And this view is also embraced by the United Nations.
I have a rather strange and radical proposal for you. If you talk about the Great Displacement, I think you should start thinking about a new version of CSI. So CSI is always outward looking. You need to help communities outside of the companies, and it's a corporate responsibility that's growing and growing and growing and growing. Really important that there's a Havas global survey that said 80% of respondents worldwide said big business has equal responsibility with governments to push for positive change. But you can't do that if you have the Great Displacement and you can't displace your workers. So my new version of CSI is internal upskilling. So if and when your workforce is displaced, they have a fighting chance of getting a job somewhere else instead of falling into the cracks.
We're also talking about growth, but when you're talking about growth, you need to have access. But what is that access to? Access to information, access to technology. Access to information, I think, is something that we still need to prioritize. We're talking about robots, we're talking about artificial intelligence, but the revolution that we are talking about requires a new set of skills. Do we have those skills? As Facebook, we are currently working with different universities in the country to ensure that we recruit engineers from the country. Do we have those skills that we want to talk about? Can we start from the basics?
So society is changing because of these technology advances, and therefore business must change. Business must understand, how do we now engage differently with society and with people? How do we engage differently with consumers? And then that brings about the perspective of inclusive growth.
The purpose of the Donors Den is those who stand up and at that point and can present within a short period of time and really encapsulate their business.
You need to invest in Ikamva Youth because 50% of our alumni come back into the program and pay it forward. It is this transformation of beneficiary into a benefactor that we believe will ultimately bring about social justice and ultimately bring about systemic change.
Who are the forgotten farmers? They are the grannies, they're the mothers of the nation. They live in the hills, in my case, in KZN. The project that I'm pitching is a value chain development, and we're hoping to identify and profile high-value crops, innovative products and services, and market opportunities for the forgotten farmer.
When winter rolls into Cape Town, the demand for shelter beds like these skyrocket. The problem is this: many people don't know where those beds are. And even if you knew where the beds are, you wouldn't know on a day-by-day basis whether those beds are free or not. So when I heard that the city wanted to repeat this project again for a 7th year, I asked them, please can I not build a system that is slightly more efficient, a technology solution?
Ikamva Youth wins first place. Well done, son.
Enormous good that comes out through CSI program, and that definitely we see lives that are changed. We also see programs that don't work well. We see where money's been wasted. So how do we collectively move from this position of disparate initiatives to a more strategic collective response, that we can actually shift the terrain in which we operate in.